Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to one more talk by the Living by Translation Mentoring Program. And today we have a guest from South Africa. She is Elizabeth Beckett, a self-published author of 7 books for 11 years now. And she is a freelance ghostwriter as well of history books. Her first book was Lucifer, released in Spanish and Portuguese, and I translated this book last year from English into Portuguese, by the way. And her second book is A Memory of Flight, in process into Italian, and she is writing books, translating those books into several languages and publishing them in several countries so that people can read in their own languages. And today, Elizabeth will talk to us about this process of writing books and how to find translators to translate them in their languages. Okay, so please, Elizabeth, welcome, and you can start.
Thanks. Thanks, Giuliano, so much for this opportunity. It's absolutely wonderful to meet you all and to be a part of this group and to be able to share my experiences with you. I'm just going to go through basically what I'm going to be covering through my talk. And the first thing is a little bit more about me. Then I'm going to talk about my books fairly briefly. And then I'm going to focus most on the translation process that I have experienced as an independent author. I'll cover a little bit about what it's like to be an independent author. And then I'm going to really focus on what I'm looking for in terms of translation, my translation experiences, and the platforms that I've experienced. And this is because you are translators, and that is the most important thing for you to be hearing. And then I'll speak a bit about my hopes for the future and really what it is that I want to get out of this process. So my author name is Elizabeth Beckett. My real name is Elizabeth, but my surname is not Beckett. I'm a South African. I write under a pseudonym, and I advertise that I live in the United Kingdom, which is partly true. I do have an English citizenship as well, but I like to remain quite incognito. And the reason for this is that my books are very controversial. They are metaphysical, esoteric, and the specific genre is actually called visionary fiction. And so I'm going to be pushing a lot of people's buttons around the world when these books get going. And they are quite controversial. So I prefer to keep myself private. I would ask if you could respect that as well. And just, you know, if you're talking about me, try not to give too much personal information. Okay, now just to introduce my books, I've written 7, I've self-published 7. I've written 7, I've self-published 6. The reason I'm a self-published author is that this was not my primary career. I have a master's degree in science in African sustainable development. And that was my career during my 20s and for a few years in my 30s. And then I've always been very interested in the spiritual and metaphysical. And I started to write books about 11 years ago, and I just couldn't stop writing books. It's a very natural process for me. It's a very beautiful process for me. I get a very good response to my work. I get good reviews to my books. And I absolutely love what it is that I do. But I never planned on being an author. And so I never studied creative writing. I never went into the traditional publishing world. And I did write some letters to literary agents. Now, literary agents are the people that hook up authors with traditional publishing houses. That's how you contact traditional publishing houses, and that is through literary agents. I never received a response from a literary agent, and I really don't mind. I'm not offended by that at all. I've absolutely loved being a self-published author. I've enjoyed the process. It just means that essentially everything that you're creating on your own, you're working on your own. All of the resources, all of the time, and all of the money needs to be generated by yourself. So, of course, life is not a fairy tale. So I also do ghostwriting for non-fiction books in history, and that provides a secondary income for me. And I'm sure that all of you as independent freelancers understand that you often need to generate several revenue streams if you're working on your own or if you are in the creative industries. That's just the reality of it. So let me introduce my books to you. The first one that I wrote was A Memory of Flight. This one, all of my English books are published on Amazon. So that means that they are exclusively available in English on Amazon, both in paperback and in ebook format. Sorry, Juliana, can I put myself on the main screen?
Yes, you are in the main screen already.
I can't, not on my side. How do I do it on my side?
You go in the upper right corner. You can change the view to speaker view or gallery view.
Okay. So must I put it on speaker view? It's on speaker view, but it's still okay.
We are seeing you in the big screen with the book already.
Are you? Okay, all right. So I did publish on other platforms at first, and like Kobo and places like that, but it was a lot harder work for me, and I didn't really get the benefits. And every single platform that you publish on is different. They require a different uploading process. They require a different editing process, a different production process, a different design process. And as an independent author, you're doing everything yourself. And so I decided to stick to Amazon, and there are benefits for me. I won't explain all of them, but there are benefits for me to staying with them. So this was the first one that came out, and it's currently being translated into Italian through BabelCube. Now, BabelCube is how I met Giuliano. So I'm going to just go to that now and explain to you how I actually connected with Giuliano. And how I did that was when COVID arrived, I had a lot of time on my hands. South Africa went into a level 5 lockdown, which meant that we were not allowed to leave home except to do grocery shopping. Our government was very strict about the COVID lockdown. And at the same time, I was looking for ways to promote my books and to market my books, because I'm terrible at marketing and advertising. And I've tried all of the social media. I've tried to pay companies. I'm very, very, very bad at marketing, and I will admit that. And that means that my sales are going quite slowly. So the reviews are very good, but I'm not getting the number of sales that I would like. And I know that it's my fault. I am not out there. I'm not promoting my books. But let me tell you this secret about writers, about authors. We want to write. We don't want to market. We don't want to design our books. We don't want to prepare our books. We don't want to distribute our books. We just want to write. Don't ever forget that about an author. Okay. And it's probably the same for translators. Translators want to translate. That's probably what you want to be doing. Unfortunately, it's not how the real world works, especially for independent authors. I've been working with my editor for 11 years. He's from the United States. And because I write in American English, we have a wonderful relationship. I've been working with a proofreader from the United Kingdom for 11 years. And I work with different designers for the book covers, including using websites like Fiverr for freelancers. So I've had to be involved in every single part of the production of my books. But the one thing I cannot do is market them. So I thought, well, what can I do? And the answer was translate them, get them out in different languages. Now, another reason that I was prompted to do this is that about 2 years ago, I was contacted by a man from Brazil, not Giuliano, who had read this book, Lucifer, in English. Okay. Don't be scared. This is not a scary book. It is a beautiful book. It is spiritual. It is uplifting. It is enlightening. It is a beautiful piece of work about the story of humanity and the story of life. And both Manette and Giuliano have worked with me on this book. But this man had read this book and he said to me, I'm starting my own business in translation. Please, can I translate your book into Portuguese in Brazil? I really think people will be interested. And can I buy the rights to your book? But that is one way that an independent author can deal with translators. They can buy the rights to our book for a fairly small fee. They do all of the preparation of the book, the distribution of the book, the advertising of the book, and they pay the author royalties. And I said, yes. And he came back to me a few weeks later and he said, I'm sorry, I've picked up another project from Canada. I don't have time. And I really believe in what will be, will be. And I said, that's fine, I understand. Don't worry about it. And I've been told before that my books are very good for the South American market, particularly because South Americans are very open-minded, actually. And people in the West are far more conservative. People in South Africa are far more conservative. And it's really the people in these sort of emerging markets like South America and the East that are really, have been told, will be very receptive to my work. So I knew that I was on the right track. I went online, I did a lot of research about translations, and I started to investigate it during COVID. And I found this website called BabelCube. And there are quite a few websites like that link up translators to authors. And there are independent authors and independent translators. And BabelCube covers about 20 languages. And I was looking for specifically Spanish and Portuguese, and Spanish because it is the most spoken language in the world. And I made a short list of, I think, Portuguese translators, and there are profiles on BabelCube so that you can see their ratings for the work that they've done, how long they've been on the website. So it's a fairly safe environment to be in. And I made a short list of maybe 5 or 10 Portuguese translators. Giuliano was on that list. And I sent off all these emails to people because on sites like that, the author can contact the translator, or the translator can contact the author. The translator can make an offer on the author's books for translations. And I got one response, and it was Giuliano. So and he said no. But he said no very politely. He said, I'm sorry, I've worked on BabelCube before. And what happens is the author does not pay the translator. The translator does the work for free. And then the translator is due royalties for 5 years in all of the territories of that language thereafter. And he said, I'm sorry, I've done that before. It didn't work. I'm not sure that I can help you. So I said, I completely understand. And I sort of carried on with my looking for translators. And eventually I found a Spanish translator through BabelCube called Mariano. And he seemed like a very solid option. And he agreed to translate the same book, Lucifer, into Spanish for me. But I wasn't 100% sure that that I could trust him. The thing is, with an independent author, the most important thing for us is trust. And trust doesn't only mean the risk of handing our money over to a translator. It also means the fact that we are handing our raw files over to you. We are handing over the files that you could email all around the world. That means that our books that are online are redundant. So it takes a huge amount of trust. And let me tell you this other thing about translation. It is the most expensive part of the self-publishing process. It is more expensive than editing. It is more expensive than research. It is more expensive than design. It is the most expensive part of the process. So where an independent author can share the risk and reward with the translator, that is the best option. Okay, on a thing like BabelCube, really the translator is taking all of the risk because they don't know that they're going to be making any money from it, like Giuliano said. But I recontacted Giuliano and I said, I've got this chap who's willing to do my book into Spanish. Please, could you at least review the book for me? And thanks to our friend COVID, Giuliano said no again, but he said it very nicely again. He said, I'm not going to review the book in Spanish because it's not my first language, but I will translate it into Portuguese for you. I've got the time now to do it. And the proviso was that being an independent author, I couldn't afford to pay that kind of money in a short amount of time. And we agreed on a payment plan that I think it was 3 installments over 8 months. So for an independent author, flexibility in payment is important. Either a flat rate royalty share is helpful for us, or if it's a flat rate, then doing that in separate installments is helpful. Anything that reduces the impact of the translation costs for us. Personally, I prefer a flat rate royalty share, and that is what I offered Giuliano. But unfortunately, he was going to get a royalty share sort of towards the end, but the book is selling quite slowly. And so the third payment did become a flat rate. But I'm hoping that in future, when I continue to work with translators directly, when I'm employing them directly, that I can build in a flat rate royalty share. And there's a very good reason for this. Besides the fact that it limits the risk for both parties, and it increases the reward for both parties, and it increases the investment for everybody. Now, this is because as an English person, I don't understand your markets. I don't understand whether people in your countries want to read paperbacks or ebooks. I don't know how they buy the books. I don't know where they buy the books from. I don't know what they think of the books. I don't know what the best idea is for marketing. So really, for me, I want to work with translators on a long-term basis in a partnership, and with somebody who is invested in what I'm doing and who can go on the journey with me. Because to translate 7 books into who knows how many languages is going to take me over 10 years. And I would like to work with dedicated translators over long periods of time who can sort of share in a partnership in that journey and share in the risk and the reward. So that is something to think about if you are pitching yourself at authors. The other books that I have done, I'll just very quickly go through them. I write about ancient civilizations quite a lot. So that's sort of prehistorical civilizations, such as Atlantis and Lemuria. And this is about really where the Celts came from, which actually originally was the island of Atlantis. My book that is selling the best at the moment, and I think it's being used in a few universities, is called The Book of Life. And it's a book on Egyptian mysticism And it's my most technical book, so it sells the most in paperback, and it's got quite a few hieroglyphics and things in it. So people prefer this book in paperback. And my most controversial book is the story of Jesus Christ, who really was called Jeshua. He was a mystic, and this is for me a very fascinating book. I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback for this, but it's either love or hate. The people who have read this either love or hate it. It's going to push a lot of buttons, but it's very enlightening. And then finally, the most recent book I've written is called Templar, which is it's a very cosmological book, and it puts into perspective the Knights Templar, but in a very grand cosmological sense. So it's probably one of my more complicated books as well. And the ones that are being translated, I've told you which ones are being translated. This was translated into Portuguese by Juliano, and it was reviewed in Spanish by Manette and translated via Babel Cube into Spanish. And next is Chinese. So I'd like to talk to you about that platform for this book going into Chinese. And that is, there seem to be different ranges of translation services, and they're all different. And every single one that I've been involved in is different. Sometimes it's you working directly with the person. Sometimes there's a contract, sometimes there is no contract. With Giuliano and Manette, there was no contract. Giuliano is just very relaxed, and he was happy to work via agreement on email. He introduced me to Manette, which gave me a lot of trust. In a referral gives a lot of trust, especially when there are groups of like-minded translators like yours. If you are referring one another, an author will automatically trust whoever you are referring, and a contract is not necessary. The other thing is, even if there is a contract, I've signed contracts with people in the United Kingdom and had very bad experiences and lost money. And as an independent author, I'm not going to be doing anything about it. I'm not going to follow up on that. I'm not going to take any sort of legal action. I don't have the resources to do that. So then I just have to write it off as a bad experience. So trust is probably the most important thing for an author. And the rates that you charge are important, but I've noticed that you all work within a range of rates that are fairly standard across the industry. And as long as you keep within that range, that's normally fine. With the book that is going to be translated into Chinese, this particular person works on her own, and she only does books into ebook for the Chinese market. And she works with a contract that she has obviously set up for me to sign. And there are three aspects to the payment. The first one is the flat fee for translation per word. And she's made that quite low. The second fee is for distribution rights in her territories in ebook for 4 years, which is reasonable and standard. And the third payment is that she will take a royalty share from those books for 4 years. So I'm paying her quite a low amount for the translation. It's very reasonable, but she will be taking royalties from those books for 4 years. So there are all these different ways that independent translators can charge for their work. And what is most important to me is quality. It's more important than how long somebody takes. And in fact, if a translator contacts me and offers to translate one of my books and says, I will do it in a month, I definitely will not use them. I don't want speed. It must not be fast. Translators must take their time. I want them to consider the entire concept of my work. And as long as it's within a reasonable amount of time. With the Chinese contract, she's got up to 12 months to do it. I'm sure she won't take as long as that. And as long as translators communicate with me and tell me exactly what's going on, I don't mind delays. And in fact, this book of mine that is currently being translated, it's just finished being translated into Italian. The girl called Irene, an Italian woman, through Babel Cube, offered to do the book for me, and immediately she contacted me and said, I'm sorry, I just got a huge business contract. It's a good paying contract. I need to do it. And I said, of course, do that. And she then got back to my project on Babel Cube afterwards, and she's now finished it, and it didn't take her too long at all. So communication is very important. You know, you can be very flexible with timing and with payment structures. I think that is very different in the business world, I'm sure. I'm sure that you have a lot of different clients, if they're business or academic clients, that they want quick turnarounds, high quality, but they pay well. It's a different market. With authors, you're dealing with creative people. There's a different structure to how we work. And as I said, I want to go on the journey with the translator. The relationship with my translator is far more important than quick turnarounds. And the technicalities, obviously, I want the concepts of the translation to be right, not just the words. And I'll give you one example of that. Now, this is where translators can help authors. You can educate us as well. I've learned so much through the last year that I've been doing this. It's unbelievable. And Manette explained to me that there's this thing called language pairing that I'd never heard of. And that is that she can take a book that Giuliano has translated from my English into Portuguese, and she can translate it from his Portuguese into Spanish, and the quality will be just as good. And I didn't know that. So it was something she explained to me. And some technicalities and concepts are important. And what was quite interesting with this book is that the subtitle is, it's the story of a descended angel. Now, in English, descended means voluntarily chosen to do something. They have voluntarily stepped down or moved down. Now, both Giuliano and Manette and Mariano, who I was working with in Babel Cube, contacted me separately without having communicated with each other and said, in Spanish and Portuguese, it's the story of a fallen angel. And I discussed the concept with them that it's different in English. And every single one of them said without fail, in our language, it's fallen and it means the same thing. And that gave me a lot of confidence that that they were right, and that we were on the right track, and that the conceptualization process, that the translators are putting as much effort into the conceptualization of the work as into just the translation. And that's what's important for writers, especially like myself, where the concept is all important. Okay, I don't know what else I have to say. So yes, okay, so for translators in this order, when as a writer, I'm looking for a translator, the most important thing to me is an online presence. And that means preferably a website. It really, really is important that you have a website, and it needs to look professional, and there need to be examples of your work. There need to be references. I'd like to see a photograph of the translator, and as many other platforms as you can be on as possible. So LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those. An online presence is very important. And to secure Giuliano, when I had spoken to him once, I then went and Googled him. And I didn't find a website, but I found him in a chat room from 5 years ago, talking in a translation chat room. And I really liked his approach. I liked his attitude. I liked what he was saying. I liked how he treated people. And that is what gave me the confidence to keep bugging him to work with me. It took a bit of convincing because he had other things going on. And it is a risk working with fiction writers. I'm sure that it's not as guaranteed or rewarding financially as the business sectors are. So an online presence is absolutely critical, and having as many references as possible and as many examples as possible and legitimate references. And being part of a group like yours is like gold. If I can speak to one of you, send a message out to Giuliano, who can send it out to other people, that I'm looking for a translator into a certain language or who lives in a certain country, and you can recommend somebody, I will ask no questions. I will sign no contract. I will just work with you. And sometimes relationships like that take years. With my editor, we signed contracts for the first 3 years, and then we got so used to working with each other that we have never signed a contract for the last 7 or 8 years, because such a good relationship of trust was built between us. So I'd say an online presence, especially at the moment, is the most important thing for translators. The next thing is communication. You don't have to say a lot. You need to respond to clients as soon as you can, be as clear as you can, be as authentic, genuine, and honest as you can. And if you begin a project with the clients, do the same. And be honest. Say that you've got a very, very high paying job. You need to put the other project aside. You'll get back to it in 2 months. And just keeping the clients abreast of what is going on during the project, just dropping an email every 3 or 4 weeks. Communication is very important. It keeps the client calm. So whatever's going on your side, to keep the clock ticking over, just communicate. And then, as I said, in terms of price range and timelines, that's always flexible and negotiable, but it needs to be within reason. And trust is very important. So that's the relationship building, and that's creating more of an organic working process. For me, it's not a business deal. I'm not a business person. It's not a hard business deal for me. It's an organic process. I want to get to know who I'm working with over a long period of time. I want it to be a good experience. Now, that might all be very different in the traditional publishing world. So I'm not sure how many of you have worked with traditional publishers and authors. It's a very different experience from us independent authors. And in fact, the traditional houses and authors do look down upon independent authors. They do not find us legitimate. I think there's possibly, in some senses, they might feel threatened by the fact that we can just produce work as we want. In other ways, they might feel that the quality is not very good and we shouldn't be doing it. I understand their perspective. They are in a professional environment. They have studied, and they have built industries around what they do. But the fact is that there's space at the moment in the world for everybody, for independent authors, for traditional publishing, for independent translators, for large translation houses. There is room in the world for all of us. And it's working. And I've spent a lot of money on editing and proofreading and design. So I'm very comfortable with the quality of the work that I put out. I don't want to be a traditional author. I don't want to win awards. I don't want to be in the New York Times bestseller list. I don't want to do book signings. I don't want to be on TV interviews. I don't want to do any of that. I'm very happy being an independent author, but I put a lot of effort, and I take it very seriously, and I invest a lot of my time and money into it. So I would give you a warning there. Just be a bit careful. If you want to work with the traditional publishing world and traditional authors, they might not like the fact that you have done translations for independent authors. Just be careful of that. It might be off-putting to them. So so maybe you need to just always take a thought before you choose your target, your whoever it is that you want to be translating for. I'm not sure if you all do a portfolio of.
I think she got disconnected. I don't know. Let's wait a minute. She told me a few days ago that she was having some internet problems in her city. She lives in the countryside. Hello. You are muted. You have to click the button to unmute.
There, okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I live in the mountains and there's a thunderstorm as well. Okay, I think the last thing that I really have to say is that independent authors, especially if we're looking to translate into other markets, we're looking for the full package. We're looking for people who will translate, prepare the documents, help with the cover design, distribute the book, and market the book in your territories. That is asking a lot. And as I said, writers want to write, translators probably want to translate. So it's asking a lot, but that is what we are increasingly looking for. And with Babel Cube, for instance, they take care of the distribution, and they do a little bit of help with the internal design of the book, but I'm responsible for the cover design and for the marketing. With a Chinese translation, she does everything. She just doesn't do a paperback book. So that's very attractive to me. When you work directly with a translator, like with Manette and with Giuliano, I need to handle everything. I have to do the page design and prepare the book, prepare the paperback, prepare the ebook, get the cover translation redone. And sometimes I outsource things like the cover, and sometimes the translator will help with laying out the paragraphs at least, so that I can just take the text and put it into the PDF. So the more you offer as a translator in terms of preparing the book for market to an independent author, the more attractive your offering is. The fuller the service package, the more likely an independent author is going to use you, because it makes life a lot easier for them. So even if it's just like Manette, she didn't do the interior design of the book for me, but she made sure that the paragraphing and the paraphrasing and the punctuation and all of that detail was absolutely right, so that I could just take the text as it was and prepare a PDF for the paperback. So she took it as far as she could take it with the skills that she has. So a full service package is much more attractive to us. But again, I understand that that's not always realistic. You know, sometimes translators, they don't have time to learn those skills. They just need to be translating. And that needs to be left up to the author or to the website that's being used. So I think I've said everything that I had to say. It's been 1 year of a very big learning experience. I mean, that's 4 languages and 2 books in 1 year, which is a lot. I also brought a book out in English in that time. So it's a lot. It's been the most fantastic process. I've loved working with Giuliano and Manette, and with the people on Babel Cube. They've also been very, very enjoyable to work with. I've turned away a lot of translators from Babel Cube who have offered to translate my books, mostly because they offered for Spanish and Portuguese, and I want to stay loyal to the people that I'm working with because that's how I want to work. And also, because of the reasons that I have given you, their profiles weren't strong enough, their communication wasn't strong enough. Your English does not have to be perfect. We're not employing you to do English translation. We are employing you to do your own language translation. So your English in communication does not have to be perfect. It's just the manner and the composition of what you are saying. And another thing that is very motivating to authors is your enthusiasm for their work. And it's not about pride. It's about you. It's about the translators understanding what needs to be communicated. So I'll give you one example of Irene, who's doing this book into Italian for me. And she contacted me and said, look, I'm a very spiritual person. I absolutely love your work. I would absolutely love to translate your books into Italian. And I looked at her website. It's very professional. She's got a very strong online presence. She does a lot of business translation, so that's probably her main income. But I knew immediately that I could trust this person. And she sent me a sample of the translation. And she had left some of the phrases in English. And I said, Irene, why did you not translate these concepts? And she said, well, those are the exact words that we use in Italian. And they are very spiritual concepts. I didn't know that anyone else in the world understood them. And she said, of course we understand them. We use the English words and we've used them. And as a community, we understand those words in English. And they are the same in Italian as they are in English. And that was very enlightening to me, that somebody could understand the work so well, that an entire community in her country understands the work so well that their phrases have been set in English rather than in Italian already before they've even read any of my work. And it was really her enthusiasm for my work that made me accept her offer. And she put me on hold for 3 or 4 months to do a business project. And I had no problem with it because, again, it's the relationship. I want to work with somebody who is so excited about my work, whether she takes a few months longer or not, then it doesn't matter to me. And I want to take translators along on the journey. I want them to reap the benefits of what I'm doing, to gain royalties, to gain recognition. It's something that I want to sort of spread out as an organic process, especially to your territories. And that's really my vision for my work, and that's specifically with the translation process. So that's it. It's about partnership. Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I have some questions here. And some comments as well. Patricia is saying that these kinds of books and subjects are the ones I love the most.
Oh, good.
And someone, Angie, said, you have no idea how important this interview is for a translator beginner. It's so nice to hear the author's perspective. And a question by Claudio No. How can you tell if the translator is reliable if you don't know the language? I think you mentioned some aspects of that. Please answer.
Okay, so the short answer is we don't. It's a huge risk. It's like jumping off a cliff, because your work that has taken you years, you're handing that file over to someone and you don't know if they're doing a good job. So the thing is to do as much research about that person as you can. When I'm very comfortable with the translator, I don't use a reviewer. If I am not as comfortable with the translator, I will pay for review services. Manette reviewed a book in Spanish for me. The translator was going to do more books for me, but I haven't heard from him for 6 months. And I'm very confused by that. And I'm worried because it's COVID and something very unpleasant could have happened. But he could also just be busy. I don't know, but I haven't heard from him for 6 months. And if he doesn't get back to me, then I will be using Manette for full Spanish translations. And based upon my experiences with her and Giuliano, I will not get a reviewer to check her work. So if I'm a bit unsure, I will get a second opinion and I will pay for a reviewer. But it becomes expensive to pay for a translator, and a reviewer becomes expensive. And the only reason I could afford to use Manette as a reviewer is because the main translator was working through BabelCube and I didn't pay him for the translation. He's just going to be getting royalties for the next 5 years. So it's on a case-by-case basis. If I can get a good, solid reference from somebody that I trust, then I will probably just go along with it and hope that you've done the best work that you could have done.
Okay, and Claudio also asked, what are good books for a given market?
I don't understand the question.
Maybe what makes a book good for a given market? What should a good book have to be good? I don't know.
I think what's happening in the world is this concept of building a tribe. It's a cliche now. You build your tribe. Okay, you build your clan. So what authors are doing is they are getting long email lists of their readers and their fans, and they're building up a tribe of like-minded individuals. And I don't have that. I tried that, but I'm so bad at marketing that I couldn't even do that. But I think keying into the like-minded people that are understanding your work is the most important thing at the moment with literature. And that's essentially, it's about finding your tribe. It's finding people who are on the same wavelength as you, finding communities of people who understand your work. And I think at the moment, that's what makes a book good. Whether my books are literarily good, or whether they would win awards, or whether they are the best form of creative writing, I'm sure that they are not. They are very good quality, but it's more about the concepts of what I'm saying and who I'm saying it to. And I think that is the niche that I fall into. I'm not a literary expert. Okay, so you've got to be very conscious of that. If you are approaching clients, have they got very strong backgrounds in literature? Are they literary and language experts, or do they just have something to say? And with me, it's more about that I've got something to say, but I put as much quality into it as I can. Okay, so I think that's,
thank you.
Explains it.
I have a question myself. Is it possible to make a living out of being an independent writer, or do you have to have a second job? How does it work for writers usually?
Okay. I Googled this the other day just to check. The average writer in the traditional writing field takes 20 years to be earning enough to support themselves. 20 years. That's a traditional writer. I've been going for 11. So please ask me in another.
Hello? Let's wait for her again. I hope she comes back. And people, do you have more questions when she comes back? Please, you can write in the chat box, or you can use the hand button. I don't know if she is coming back. Let's wait. Eu vou fazer uma edição desse vídeo depois, cortar essa parte, né? O Claudionor já fez as duas perguntas, eu perguntei na ordem contrária, na verdade. Não sei se ela vai vir. Oh, a pergunta tá legal, né? Se dá pra... Mas ela falou, né, de toda forma. Tereza tá dizendo que o Otto e a Raquel tá dando um show na interpretação. Ela tá escutando em 2 computadores, o inglês e o português, então... O que é que você achou aí, Tereza, da interpretação deles? Pode falar, por enquanto.
Então, show de bola. Aqui, esse aqui é um computador, esse aqui é outro computador. Tá me ouvindo?
Sim.
Ok. Você me ouviu? Tô meio confusa aqui, com tanto fio, com tanto fio para todo lado. Pois é, essa é uma maneira maravilhosa para quem está interessado na interpretação de praticar. Porque você fica comparando. E eu estava aqui, ó, até escrevendo uns termos que eles usaram, que eu achei assim, bem interessante, a escolha de palavras dele. Muito bom, gente. Muito, muito bom mesmo.
Legal, legal. Poxa, tá demorando. Será que ela vai voltar, hein? Tinha uma pergunta legal aqui, se os livros dela vão virar filmes. Ela disse que estava com uns problemas de internet na semana passada e talvez caísse. Mas pelo menos deu certo, né? A apresentação toda, só foi agora nas perguntas. Vamos esperar mais uns minutinhos aí, né? Ver se ela volta. Se não, a gente vai encerrar, né? Falta só 4 minutos, né? Para dar 1 hora.
Juliana, eu fiquei com vontade de perguntar para ela como é que ela foi confiar em você, hein?
Presença online, você viu, né? Presença forte aí.
Pois é, pois é. Ela já, na realidade, ela já indicou as razões, são várias razões. Muito bom. Você realmente tem uma cara confiável.
O Otto está falando aqui, Juliano é autêntico, passa confiança. O Otto está dentro da cabine, por isso que a gente não pode ouvi-lo agora. Só se botar no canal de português, né, na verdade. Eu acho que ela não vai aparecer, não. O que aconteceu foi que ela entrou em contato comigo, agora conto até a minha versão aqui da história, né, pelo Babel Cube, só que eu já tinha feito alguns livros em 2015 e ao longo de 4 anos, esses 5 livros traduzidos, eu arrecadei entre 400 e 500 dólares. Então foi pouquíssimo, né? Pelo trabalho que eu tive, que foram, acho que foi entre, sei lá, umas 150 mil palavras, né? Esses 5 livros juntos, talvez tenha sido isso. Ou então 200 mil. Então, quer dizer, um trabalho praticamente gratuito, né? Aí, quando ela me contactou, eu recusei. Outros autores também já tinham me contactado. Aí eu falei, não quero mais fazer por aqui, não. Aí, depois de alguns meses, ela entrou em contato de novo. Aí já estava na pandemia, como ela falou, né? E aí eu falei, quer saber? Eu vou fazer. Era um livro só de 22 mil palavras, mais ou menos isso. Aí eu fiz para ela e ela concordou em me pagar, porque eu fiz um preço, né, legal. Então, ela me pagou em 3 parcelas ao longo de alguns meses. Então, foi bom, né? A tradução literária dá um pouco mais de trabalho, porque é uma coisa mais criativa e tal. Não é muito mecânica, né? Você tem que pensar, tem que ler de novo, não sei o quê. Então, tem tudo isso, né? Tradução técnica já é uma coisa mais rápida. É uma coisa que você faz talvez até automaticamente, né? Sem pensar muito, já sabe o que é que vai em cada lugar. Agora, literária não, né? Você tem que ser criativo e tal, achar soluções. Aí eu fiz o livro dela, foi legal. Depois eu indiquei a Manê para revisar a tradução dela, que tinha sido em espanhol, né, também. Então, foi legal, né? E agora essa palestra aqui. Então, algum comentário, pessoal? O que é que vocês acharam? Então, vamos registrar aqui as perguntas, né? Depois eu posso perguntar para ela. É o seguinte, teve mais uma pergunta aqui da Andy. Gostaria de saber se ela recebeu propostas de tornar os seus livros filmes de Hollywood, por exemplo. Então, é uma pergunta que fica aí para a resposta depois. O que mais? Tem alguém aqui que está dizendo que está aprendendo bastante, que vai começar em breve a sua carreira. É isso. O Otto está dizendo que a interpretação pode ser mais técnica ou mais artística. Então, eu vou até eliminar aqui a interpretação, né? Vamos, como é que para essa interpretação, rapaz? Terminei. Então, Otto e Raquel já estão aqui conosco. Tradutor literário vira técnico em áreas que nunca imaginaria ter que pesquisar. É isso. Então, galera, eu acho que a gente pode terminar por aqui, se vocês não tiverem mais nenhum comentário. Ela caiu aí no finalzinho, mas foi mais de 50 minutos aí, né, contínuos, e a internet funcionou bem. Então, ótimo.
Que bom que ela não caiu no meio, né?
Ainda bem, viu? Então, legal, galera. Legal.
Posso falar só mais uma coisa, Juliane, rapidinho? Duas coisas, aliás. Na realidade, às vezes ela caiu no meio, mas o Otto e a Raquel foram tão eficientes que conseguiram...
Comentaram aí o que
Não, eles conseguiram completar a frase dela. Foi ótimo, não deixaram a frase dela no meio.
Caiu uma vez e depois agora a segunda, não vi outra.
É a mágica da antecipação do discurso.
Exatamente. E outra coisa que eu queria falar é uma dica para quem traduz para outras línguas, não só para o português, inglês e espanhol, mas eu não sei em que línguas essa autora já traduziu o livro dela, mas quando eu falei que eu era do Canadá, ela se interessou, perguntou para mim com que línguas eu trabalho, né?
Ela está voltando, galera, está voltando. Peraí, vamos ver o que ela vai dizer aqui no final. Vamos completar então esse vídeo aqui. Otto e Raquel na cabine de novo. Vamos lá.
Certo.
Coloca a gente lá.
Hello? Elizabeth? Não. Não sei se está dando certo esse negócio, não. Ela está aqui, sim. Ela está aqui.
Amen.
Hello, Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm so sorry. Hello.
I was talking to them about how I translated your book, How I Met You. The same thing, but my version. The same version, more or less. Yeah. And we were discussing some things about translation. Hello? Não vai rolar, não. Complicado. Hello, Elizabeth? Hello, hello? Acho que não vai rolar, não, pessoal, sinceramente. Ela está com dificuldades aí de entrar, não sei. Eu ia fazer a última pergunta aqui do Hollywood, para ver se ela responde essa Hollywood aí.
Juliano?
Oi, pode falar.
Oi. Bom, eu infelizmente consegui entrar, acho que depois aí da queda, né?
Você só entrou quando ela caiu? Você entrou depois de 50 minutos, então?
Sim, eu entrei e já tinha caído. Ainda bem que foi depois, vão dizer que eu fui pé frio.
Não, mas está gravado, viu? Então eu
vou que eu ia te perguntar.
A palestra toda deu certo.
Tá, vai ser exibido no teu canal depois, né?
No YouTube.
Tá legal.
Tereza,
Tá bom,
você
obrigado.
ia falando que ela se interessou quando você falou que morava no Canadá?
Sim, então, eu só ia falar isso, que eu fiquei assim com o pressentimento de que ela está com interesse de traduzir os livros dela para o francês. Eu não sei, eu posso estar errada, eu fiquei assim com esse pressentimento. Então, uma dica para a Cristiane, para outros que traduzem para o francês, talvez entrar em contato com ela, né? É isso.
Ah, tá. Legal. Vocês veem aí que é uma autora que está bem aberta a propostas, né? Escreveu. Galera, então eu acho que tá bom, né? Tá bom por hoje. Terminando a interpretação de novo. Entra e sai dessa cabine, rapaz, não acaba. Então, pessoal, obrigado pela presença. E eu colocarei o vídeo aí. As últimas perguntas terão que ser respondidas por fora, né? A pergunta aí dos filmes, né? Então é isso, galera. Obrigado aí pela presença e a gente se vê.
Você. Tchau, tchau.
Obrigado, Juliano. Obrigado mais uma vez.
Obrigada a você, Juliano. Tchau,
Tchau.
pessoal.
Tchau.
Muito obrigado pela participação de todos.